Warm welcome to our presentation. Our topic is impact of COVID-19 on education. As you know, the Agenda of Sustainable Development Goals is a plan of action for people, planet, and prosperity. Our topic correlates with SDG 4 quality education. It aims to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. This goal, in fact, has 10 targets, and majority of them suit our topic: free, equitable, and quality education, elimination of all discrimination, universal literacy and numeracy, sustainable development and global citizenship, inclusive and safe schools, and supply of qualified teachers in developing countries. One of the most serious consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic has been the disruption of children's education worldwide. That's why we believe that the children's right to education was broken due to the pandemic. The indicators of this the closures of schools, the increase of discrimination, the lack of good internet connection, the exacerbation of vulnerabilities for those who are already disadvantaged, and the lack of trained teachers and computer facilities during the lockdowns. According to the UNESCO Institute for Statistics, nearly 100 million children across 8 age cohorts would move below the minimum proficiency in reading in 2020 due to the pandemic. Undoubtedly, the COVID-19 pandemic was challenging for all education-related systems in the world. A new kind of injection led to the largest failure in the functioning of education in history, which affected further school and universities closures. If speaking about school education, more than 1.2 billion children in 186 countries were suffered by the pandemic. As a result, school students were taught remotely via digital platforms. Half of all learners who could not go to school due to the pandemic had no access to a household computer, and as many as 43% have no internet at home, a figure which reaches as much as 82% for African countries. The main challenge referred to the difficulties with the use of technology, mostly by teachers during the lockdowns. Nowadays, education and COVID-19 cannot be imagined without e-learning. Let's pay attention to UNESCO's opinion about the impact of coronavirus on education. Education systems around the world are facing an unprecedented challenge in the wake of massive school closures mandated as part of public health efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19. The unexpected development for distance learning, we formulated the research question as: is remote teaching a sustainable teaching and learning strategy? To explore the sustainability of remote teaching specifically to support SDG 4 aims, it is important to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education to promote lifelong learning opportunities for all in the long term. Education as a social system must adapt to the social, economic, environmental changes of the modern world and as a result constantly evolve. To do this, the following two concepts have to be considered and included in the education, namely inclusive education and equitable quality education. Inclusive education views education as a fundamental human right and focuses on their well-being. Generally, it is about fostering sense of belonging in students regardless of their inheritance. Equitable quality education is about providing equal access to all students regardless of their sex, race, color, religion, and so on.
All in all, the findings of the existing literature claim that emergency remote teaching has given a significant boost to online learning, opening up new opportunities and reflections for the education system. But in the long term, the following issues must be addressed. First of all, the technological challenges. This mainly concerns the lack of internet connection and the lack of electronic devices available. Many households had the problem that, for instance, 3 children had online classes, but only one computer was available for everyone. Regarding internet connectivity, the problems were most severe, especially in developing countries. For example, only 24% of the African population has internet access. Another challenge are the pedagogical challenges. The lack of technological skills of teachers and students have to be addressed to provide them with appropriate skills and capabilities to use platforms for remote teaching and learning. Further, there is a need for teaching materials in the form of interactive multimedia, like images, animations, and educational games. The material has to be adapted so that it fits distance learning. Staying concentrated is way more difficult in online lessons, which is why the methods and materials have to be adapted to mitigate these drawbacks and keeping the attention of students more and making use of the advantages of online learning. Lastly, systems for feedback have to be developed since it is more difficult to evaluate for teachers whether students enjoyed the online classes than it is in presence. Lastly, there are the social challenges. The lack of human interaction is an issue in online learning, especially when all or many classes are held online. What is more is the lack of physical spaces at home that some households might face. This can influence the attentiveness of students but also teachers dramatically. Further, the lack of support of parents or parents who might also work in the same space as students remains a challenge when it comes to remote learning. According to our research, if e-learning is used in the right way and if challenges are overcome, then e-learning can be a good opportunity to teach. If systems and programs are developed for online learning, which will be used by several institutions, a unity of educational process can be reached. Further, the interaction of students and teachers is easier as they can chat and ask questions online, which provides students with continuously being in touch with the professor due to this online connection. The integration of before mentioned components into a single practical system will make it possible to create educational products that are competitive not only in local markets, but also in a global context, and taking into account multiple worldviews and alternative knowledge systems, as well as new achievements in science thanks to the development of digital technologies, including e-learning.
Here we have mentioned examples of initiatives implemented to increase inclusiveness and equity with e-learning. No Students Left Behind approach adopted by higher education institutions in South Africa to support students in the transition to online teaching and e-learning. This initiative was necessary because only 29% of African higher education system were able to quickly transition to online teaching and learning. In Croatia and Serbia, for example, the government provided the online learning classes broadcast via TV for primary school students, with online and distance learning starting the day after the lockdown. In Portugal, hard copy teaching resources have been promptly delivered to children's homes thanks to a partnership between schools and post office services. The open educational resources approach containing a large number of free and accessible learning materials. Blended learning is introduced to combine face-to-face and online learning experiences to be intensified and reinforces feelings of community belonging. Here we analyze the experience of distance teaching in Italy. According to our research, in the northern classes, advanced platforms are being used and over 51% of students regularly attend video lessons. In the southern regions, students are mostly assigned homework to be done and corrected online. To overcome this digital divide, several institutional or beneficial initiatives have been undertaken during the COVID-19 pandemic. Campaigns to collect and donate technological devices for students who need them have been launched. Cura Italia decree has allocated funds to encourage schools to use e-learning platforms and to keep them with digital tools. Give less well-off students digital devices on free loan and to train school staff. Funding schools to purchase computers and tablets for students who don't have them. Some companies in the ICT sector have even offered free services to support citizens and have collaborated with the Ministry of Education to make completely free platforms for institutions to facilitate the organization and transmission of teaching. The government should address the following challenges to sustain online learning: protocols with the professional order of psychologists to manage the emotional effects of lockdown on students, school staff, and families, agreement with the mobile phone companies for discounts on cost for connection, complete the infrastructure that guarantees coverage of the entire national territory with broadband. In conclusion, technology-based online and distance education has been considered one of the overall effective teaching and learning strategy employed prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. The role of emergency remote teaching as a sustainable teaching and learning strategy must be continuously improved. Reliable network infrastructure needs to be developed. The changes we suggest are: more affordable devices must be provided. Diverse modalities should be used to provide accessible learning experience for students in remote areas, as already seen in some countries. Systematic training initiatives should be provided to improve teachers' and students' technological skills. A clear and consistent plan should be developed. Strategies for communication and digital education assessment need to be created. A blended approach should be used to improve social interaction and collaboration among teachers and students. Technologies that use virtual and augmented reality need to be improved in order to stimulate students' involvement and interaction. The use of intelligent technologies for remote teaching needs to be reinforced to encourage personalized, inclusive, and participatory online learning paths. More inclusive tools, platforms, and devices need to be developed in order to make digital learning resources accessible to a wider range of people with disabilities. Thank you for your attention.